Well, welcome to this short presentation about the Translational Therapeutics Accelerator program, or TRxA, part of the Critical Path Institute. My name is Maaike Everts, and I am the Executive Director of TRxA. I started with C-Path in April 2023, and I'm excited to tell you about this. And we also have with us Michelle. Michelle, maybe you can introduce yourself.
Hello, I am Michelle Morgan. I'm Associate Director of TRxA, joined the Critical Path Institute in 2018, and just recently have been able to have the honor of operationalizing the Translational Therapeutics Accelerator.
Great. So in this short presentation, we want to give you an overview about TRxA and our funding program to see if you have any projects in your institution, or maybe you know of projects at other institutions that may be eligible for our support. But let's start with the vision of the TRxA program. We want to be a global drug product accelerator that's uniquely known for the quality data packages that we help put together, as well as the regulatory strategies of the projects that we support to really facilitate favorable licensing opportunities between academia and industry. So this already points to a couple of things I want to point out. The first is that we are global. We have no geographical boundaries, so we can support projects anywhere in the world. What we do have limitations on, though, is that we fund projects within academia. So that means that startups are, unfortunately, at this point in time, not included. But academic projects in academia are certainly eligible, and we try to support them to get them, more mature and attractive for licensing opportunities with external parties. Now, the reason TRxA exists is depicted on the next slide, and let's go through this from left to right. The problem is, as many of you know, is that the transition of academic projects towards industry is sometimes called the drug development valley of death. And it has multiple facets that cause this valley of death, but some include the lack of understanding of the data packages that is really needed to be of interest to industry. And what I think a lot of tech transfer offices hear when they talk with potential licensing partners is, your project is too early. And we want to help with that and really mature that data package. Help also identify what needs to go into the data package to make it attractive for a licensing opportunity. The other is the lack of knowledge about the regulatory aspects of drug development. And this is something where the Critical Path Institute can help. We talk a little bit more about C-Path in a little bit, but we have a lot of internal expertise about regulatory science, and we definitely want to help that, help support the projects that we select to think about these aspects. The last point I wanted to point out is the sometimes lack of reproducibility from academic studies. This is not due to any nefarious illegal practices of academic professors or anything like that, but really just sometimes the lack of robustness of the data that sometimes can be achieved. And this is sometimes a problem when academic groups talk to industry, when industry wants to replicate their findings, that there's some disconnect there. So the solution then in the middle is for us to provide both funding and expertise. And the expertise comes in the shape of regulatory guidance, but also assist in study design and implementation. Really work together as what is the next experiment that we need to do to get towards a data package that can be A, attractive for licensing, or B, really get to the clinic as quickly as possible. To execute some of these programs, we would coordinate involvement of contract research organizations, or CROs. Those CROs can, for example, validate the academic findings. So if you have a third neutral party replicating your key experiment, that really adds a lot of value and de-risking to your program. It's going to make it more attractive for a licensing opportunity. And then also CROs can execute parts of the work where there's really not infrastructure or expertise within universities. You can think of pharmacokinetic studies, or maybe GLP toxicity studies, kinome profiling. Some of these things are just much more efficiently outsourced to CROs rather than have them done in-house. So then on the right column, we think TRxA is a pretty unique model. We're an independent nonprofit, so we're really a neutral facilitator for these kind of programs, and we will not claim any ownership of IP. That all stays squarely with the investigator and the university, or maybe a nonprofit research institution. And we really want to leverage C-Path's regulatory knowledge and all the relationships that we have. In addition to cutting a check, we really want to also provide strong project management to really facilitate the planning and execution of the project, again, to help move the project towards the clinic where it ultimately can make an impact on patients' lives. So looking at the graphic on the bottom, The area where TRxA really wants to play is in lead optimization and IND enabling studies. So this means that early drug discovery phases are not eligible for funding. So for example, high throughput screening, target identification, that all falls out of scope. Also, anything clinical would fall out of scope, but that middle part, that kind of value of death, hard part, that's sometimes really difficult to do in academia, lead optimization and IND enabling studies, that's really where our sweet spot is. So going to the next slide, I wanted to briefly talk about how we are funded ourselves. We are very fortunate to have received a grant from the Frederick Gardner Cottrell Foundation. This is a foundation established by Research Corporation Technologies. This is a VC group in Tucson, Arizona. And they established this foundation quite a while back in 1998 to provide financial support for scientific research and educational programs at nonprofits like C-Path. So then moving forward, I'm going to hand it over to Michelle, who will talk a little bit more about C-Path as a whole, so that we can then put TRxA into the C-Path context. So Michelle, I'll hand the baton to you.
Thank you, Maaike. So the Critical Path Institute, we are a public-private partnership, and we pride ourselves on acting as a trusted neutral third party in this role, working to accelerate medical product development. And how do we do that? As an organization, we identify with our stakeholders areas of high unmet medical need. What are the bottlenecks to getting new therapies to patients as quickly and as safely as possible? Identifying those and then finding solutions or drug development tools to accelerate that medical product development. We do this with our stakeholders, our wonderful stakeholders who are illustrated here on the right. That includes the pharmaceutical industry, representatives from those companies. It includes regulatory agencies such as the US Food and Drug Administration, the European Medicines Agency, and Japan's PMDA as examples. The patient voice is critical in medical product development, so we work closely with patient and advocacy groups and foundations, and of course other research organizations such as the National Institutes of Health and all of the important work being done at academic institutions around the globe. Bringing stakeholders together to align on what that unmet medical need is and working toward a solution, and then seeking regulatory endorsement of that solution so the tool can be used with confidence by researchers when submitting an IND for consideration. So we have nearly 25 consortia across C-Path. Many are disease specific, some are disease agnostic, but all of them bring together the best science available through our stakeholders with a broad range of experience, working to achieve consensus and sharing the risk and cost associated with these drug development tools. No one company or agency can do it all. We work together, bringing folks together to help make that happen. So what this slide here illustrates exactly what I just articulated. We work with our stakeholders to align on an unmet medical need, which you see on the left side of the screen. And then we apply C-Path's core competencies to address that issue. That includes data management and standards. We have a great data collaboration centers that's working to collect and aggregate data according to FAIR principles and making sure that that information and data is available to the broader research community. Biomarkers, for example, safety biomarkers are critical in medical product development. Modeling and analytics, that includes our quantitative medicine work, clinical trial simulation tools, clinical outcome assessments, and of course, wrapping all that in regulatory science and the regulatory pathway needed to bring new drug development tools and medical products to fruition. And that is our ultimate goal, those drug development tools and other solutions. Below in the aqua color is where C-Path concentrates its efforts. I'm going to give you some specific examples for each of these buckets, but they're not, they're not limited to these. Neuroscience, examples there would be Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. Immunology and hematology, that would include type 1 diabetes as an example, or sickle cell disease. Infectious diseases, with tuberculosis being one of those elements. Safety science, especially biomarkers, right? Making sure that we reduce drug toxicities and can identify and predict those toxicities early in the drug development process. Rare and orphan diseases and pediatrics. Those are some really big buckets, but we do a lot of important work in each of those buckets, again, with the ultimate goal being development of drug development tools and other solutions, and building, achieving regulatory consensus on those tools. This is all built on our neutral convener status. So how does TRxA fit into all of this? So TRxA, TRxA is focused on drug development. C-Path is focused on drug development tools, and there is a lot of synergy there. So TRxA focuses our efforts primarily in C-Path's concentration areas that I just described. But we do acknowledge, and if there's for example, a project in oncology, you may not see oncology listed here, but it may live within one of those buckets, or it may be something that we would just consider because it's a really important project that's scientifically sound and encouraging. And of course, we only work in small molecules. At this time, drug repurposing, biologics, gene therapy, those are out of scope for TRxA right now. But as we continue to grow, that may change.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Thank you, Michelle, for that overview. So then bringing it back to TRxA, I wanted to briefly describe what types of projects we fund. So we have stage 1, 2, and 3. Stage 1 is a project if you would come to us with an early lead molecule and you want to develop that into a late lead series. That will be funded at $250,000 for up to 1 year. You can propose projects of a shorter duration, and I do want to emphasize that this is total cost that includes indirects, and we do cap out indirect cost at 10%. Now we would convert this to your local currency if you're not in the US, but it's something that we can work out. Stage 2 will be funded at $500,000, and that is to develop a late lead series and really hone in onto what is your clinical candidate. And then stage 3 is candidate selection through IND enabling studies, which will be funded at $1 million per year. On our website, you can find more detailed criteria of what each stage will be looking for as entry criteria and what we will be considering success criteria. So we definitely encourage you to check that out, or please reach out to us as well if you have any questions. So TRxA in the larger C-Path context, to reiterate some of the points that Michelle made, is that we really think there's synergy between TRxA and the C-Path consortia. The consortia focus on drug development tools, and we're directly supporting drug development. But really through our consortia, we have so much access to subject matter expertise that can really help the projects that we fund make the right decisions and think about regulatory aspects early on, which can really help make sure that the path to the clinic is as straight as possible. So we apply the regulatory expertise as well as the project management and planning that we can bring to the table to the projects that we fund, again, to keep it moving forward to the patient as quickly as possible. So on the next slide, it describes what the selection process is. So we have a 3-stage selection process. The first is we have an annual call for pre-proposals. Pre-proposals are really high-level descriptions, non-confidential summaries about the project that will be submitted through our website or portal. It really describes what is the target, what's the status of your molecule, and roughly what do you need to do to get this moving forward. This is reviewed by an internal group within C-Path called a Programmatic Review Board, or PRB, and they determine which projects move forward to the next stage of the process. That next stage will be to request a non-disclosure agreement. So we institute and finalize these NDAs with institutions because we want to take a look at confidential information, in particular the chemical structure of the molecule. This is something that the chemist within our team will take a look at, and they will make additional selection based on that. Then whoever is left gets invited for a full proposal. We actually, as the TRxA team, are available to help with putting a proposal together if you have questions about what actually should I put in there, because we're not the reviewers. We're really there to support you. So we have an external group set up to review the proposal called our Scientific Advisory Committee, or SAC. This is comprised of ex-pharma, consultants, venture capitalists, clinicians, regulatory scientists, toxicologists. We put together a nice broad panel that will look at the projects, review them, score them, and those reviews will actually be made available to the applicant. So even if you don't get selected for funding, hopefully it gives you some important insights into maybe some aspects of your projects that could be improved, what aspects are strong, which may be helpful for you to move it forward in a different manner. The Scientific Advisory Committee scores get fed to the PRB, and they will make the ultimate funding decision based on strategic fit. Of course, the science needs to be best, so we're only looking at the best projects. And then if we still need to make a decision, that's where we kind of have the strategic match with what Critical Path Institute focus areas are. So yeah, that is actually in a nutshell what TRxA is all about. We hope this is useful for you to at least get excited about the project. If you have any questions or want to learn more about any particular detail, we're happy to schedule a call with you. Just reach out to us, either to me personally, the email is on the screen, everts@cpath.org, or you can also email TRxA, a generic TRxA email address, which is TRxA@c-path.org. So hope to talk to you at some point in the future. Thank you.